Hello detectives, and welcome to my video for April. Now, as you may know, a lot of really exciting things have happened to me this month. First of all, I went to visit the Penguin Warehouse and I signed 5,500 copies of the new special edition hardback 5th anniversary edition of Murder Most Unladylike, which is going to be coming out in June to coincide with 5 years of my first book being out, which is amazing in itself. I genuinely didn't think when Murder Most Unladylike was published 5 years ago that it would still be in print today, and the fact that it is still so popular that they want to do a whole new edition is absolutely amazing. That special edition, that hardback, is going to be available online and in stores, and wherever you get it, wherever you buy it from, it will be signed, because I have signed the entire first print run. You will not be able to miss out on having that signed edition. Of course, if you then come to meet me in the next few months, I will be able to personalize for you, be able to write your name in it, but they will all be signed with my name, which is amazing. As well as that, I've been working really hard on book 8, and this month I've handed in the first proofs of book 8. Now, first proofs basically means the first time that the book has been laid out like a book, like it will be when you go and buy it in August. All the pages look like pages, the fonts are beautifully designed up, and it's really starting to look the way it will end up looking when you buy it. What I've been doing with those first proofs is checking them and adding in any final tweaks I want to make to the text. So now that I've handed the first proofs in, I have basically finished work on book 8. That doesn't mean it's finished, though. I now have a really great team of proofreaders who are going to be checking it through again and again and again to make sure that the entire book looks absolutely perfect by the time it is printed. And then takes a few weeks to be printed, and then it takes a while to be distributed, which is what we're doing in the time between now and August, if it seems to you like the book is finished and it should just come out tomorrow. But we are working really hard, and we're working as fast as we can, and it will definitely be out on that 8th of August date. It'll be out in the UK and Ireland on the 8th of August, and it will be moving through the world in the weeks after that. So if you live in South Africa, or if you live in Australia or New Zealand, it will be with you a few weeks after the 8th, as usually happens. And I know that I said I was going to be revealing the title and the full cover of book 8 this month. Now that's been pushed back just a little, and I do apologise for that. But there are some really good reasons why it's been pushed back, and I think when I'm finally allowed to reveal the full title and the cover, you will see why we had to wait a bit, and you will be so pleased that we did. I now think that it's going to be revealed in the first few weeks of May, so not long to wait, but as soon as I can, I will get it out, I will show it to you, and I think you're going to love it. I think it's beautiful. My illustrator Nina Tara has done the most fantastic job as usual, along with my amazing design team at Puffin, and the finished result is gorgeous. So that's what I've been up to, and that is what is coming up for me. But now I'm going to tell you about some of my favourite books that I have been reading this month in all of the free time I've had between doing all of those things. The first book I've chosen is one that is extremely special to me for many reasons, and it is Sharna Jackson's Highrise Mystery. The first reason that it is really special is because I have given it a blurb. As you can see there on the front cover, there is my name and some praise from me. Now, I'm given a lot of books to read, and I only choose my very favourites to blurb. So if my name is on a book with some praise, it means that it is an extremely special book, and I particularly loved it. But I didn't just blurb this book, I actually helped to edit it. This book is published by a company called Knights Of, and I am a good friend of Knights Of, and so I got asked if I would edit this book because they knew that I loved murder mysteries, and they thought that Sharna and I would really get on, and we did. And so I got to read this book very early on. I got to read the very first draft of it and give comments on the story, on the characters, on how everything was working together, and how, of course, how the murder mystery got solved. I had a great time working on this book. Sharna is the most fantastic writer. I think I've read this book about 10 times, and I still love it. Every time I read it, I just get so sucked into the world of Nick and Norva. So I can definitely say that this is one of the most special books to me that's going to be coming out this year. So this book is about two girls, Nick and Norva. Nick and Norva are sisters, and they live on an estate in London called the the Triangle. And they are very inquisitive girls, especially Nick. They watch their neighbours. They make notes in something they call the Tri-Files of all the comings and goings of their neighbours. And this is very useful to them because one day one of their neighbours, Hugo, goes missing. Now, Hugo is one of Nick's favourite people. He is one of the most beloved residents of the Tri, and he goes missing. And the girls become convinced that Hugo is not just missing, he has been murdered. They can't convince anyone of this until they go snooping around in the building's trash chutes and they discover Hugo's dead body. It is now a murder, and they realise the only people who could have had the opportunity to do it are the people on their 2 floors of the Tri. So this case is going to be very close to home for them, and it becomes even more so when their father is accused of Hugo's murder. This book is perfect for anyone 8+ who loves mysteries, who loves murder mysteries, who loves my books, and who loves reading about groups of detectives working together to solve cases. Nick and Norva argue a lot, but they are best friends as well as sisters at the end of the day, and it is their teamwork that solves the very mysterious Highrise Mystery. The next book I've chosen is one for slightly older readers, for young adult readers, and it is The Quiet at the End of the World by Lauren James. Now, Lauren is fast becoming one of my favourite young adult authors. She wrote a book called The Loneliest Girl in the Universe last year, and it was one of my favourite YA reads last year, and this one is just as brilliant. The Quiet at the End of the World is set in a world where humanity has become sterile. They basically can't have any more babies naturally. And they have almost all died out. There are just a few people left. And Lowry and Shen, the 2 kids here, are the 2 youngest people in the world. They're 16 and 17 years old, and they were born with frozen eggs. And after them, there are no more eggs. There are no more kids left to be born. And so they and their parents and all the other people in their community, there are only about 85 people left in this community in London, they're trying to work out how to fix this sterilization and make it so humans can have kids again. And Lowry and Shen are trying to work out where they fit in the universe, what their purpose is, since they don't think that they're going to be able to keep their whole species alive after they're gone. But then something starts happening to the people in Lowry and Shen's community. They seem to be in danger, something terrible is happening to them. And Lowry and Shen have to work out what is happening and what it means for their civilization and their future. It's a science fiction book, as you can tell. It's a little bit creepy at times. It's a bit sad, just the thought of being so alone as Lowry and Shen are. But it has a really interesting and really hopeful end. This book is very clever, it's very interesting. If you like thinking about big philosophical questions about life, the universe, and everything, this is a great book for you. I would say it's for anyone 12+ who enjoys YA fiction, who's enjoyed Lauren's other books, and who wants to read a really interesting book about a possible future for our civilization. The next book I've chosen is this huge tome. It really is massive, and it is On a Sunbeam by Tillie Walden. Now, I think I recommended Tillie's book Spinning last year, and that was a memoir about her time as an ice skater. But this is a very different book. This is definitely not a memoir. It is set in some strange future universe, set in space, in a world where there don't seem to be any male people. Everyone in this book is either female or non-binary, and they all live in this very strange, slightly spooky, slightly empty world where they just float around through space. Look at these beautiful illustrations. Part of this, what's wonderful about this book, is how eerie it is, how beautifully illustrated and described it is, because Tillie illustrates this and she writes it. This is entirely from her brain, and her brain is a pretty incredible place. It is the story of the life of a girl called Mia. It's split into 2 time periods, 5 years ago and present. And 5 years ago, Mia was a pupil at a boarding school in space. Of course, you can see why I like it. I love stories about boarding schools, especially really interesting, unusual takes on the boarding school genre, and this is definitely that. And 5 years later, Mia is on a salvage ship and she sails around the universe with this group of people, and they try to fix these huge crumbling buildings floating in the middle of space. The whole thing is really eerie, really beautiful, really, really interesting. And it also follows the relationship that Mia has with a girl that she meets while she's at boarding school, and they fall in love, and it seems that they're going to be together forever until something happens to pull them apart. And 5 years later, when Mia is on the salvage ship, she is trying to find her way back to this girl, trying to work out where she is and how she can save her and bring them both back together again. So it is a really interesting, unusual book. I don't think I've ever read a science fiction comic. I've never read a science fiction book that looks quite like this, that feels quite like this. This really is an incredibly unique book, an incredibly unique look at the universe, at science fiction in general. So I love it for its originality. I think the illustrations, as I've said, they're beautiful. They're really touching, really strange, and you just want to keep staring and staring at them. This is a great book to read if you like graphic novels, if you like books that are told as much in picture as in story, if you like science fiction stories, if you're interested in spaceships, also if you like boarding school stories like me. I would say this is probably for 12 plus. It also is for somebody who wants to sit for a long time and read a very heavy book. This really is heavy. My wrists were aching as I was trying to hold it up as I was reading it. But it's worth it. It's wonderful. The next book I've chosen is a book for adults, and I don't normally choose adult books, but I do when I particularly adore them, and this is one I particularly adored. This is Zen Cho's The True Queen. Now, I have talked about the first book in this series, Sorcerer to the Crown by Zen Cho, last year, and it was one of my very favourite books that I read in the last few years. It's a book that I have not been able to stop raving about since I first read it. It is incredibly inventive, it's incredibly clever and warm and lovely to read, and The True Queen, the sequel to Sorcerer to the Crown, managed to follow up and be just as brilliant. The world of Sorcerer to the Crown and The True Queen is Regency England, mostly Regency England. The book starts there anyway. And it's in a world where magic is real and magicians are very important, and each country has its own take on magic and magicians and how magic works. In England, magicians are called thaumaturges, and they're all men. There are not allowed to be female magicians. That is very frowned on until in Sorcerer of the Crown, a girl called Prunella turns up and she throws the whole of English magic on its head because she's incredibly talented as a magician, and she actually takes over all of English magic and she becomes the very first sorceress to the crown. She assumes the highest magical status in the land, and that is where Sorcerer to the Crown ends. This book starts on an island called Jandabaik, somewhere in Malaysia, and it's an island that is extremely magical, and it's looked after by this magical practitioner called Mak Gengang, who is an extremely important Malaysian witch, and she is sort of the equivalent to Prunella in Malaysia. In this book, she takes in these two sisters called Sakti and Muna, and Sakti and Muna have washed up on the shores of Jandabaik, and they don't know where they have come from. They just have a memory of a big storm, and then they turned up on the beach. This story is all about Sakti and Moon trying to work out who they are, and as part of that, Mak Gengang decides to send them to England, send them to Prunella, to her newly created school for sorceresses, and see if she can help work out where on earth they are from. And so the book is really narrated by this character, Muna, as she tries to work out where she's from, who she is, and why on earth she has no magic, while her sister, Sakti, has all the magic. The book takes place partly in Jandabaik, partly in England, and partly in the world of the fairies. But it's a world of the fairies, and this whole book has magic in it that we I, as a white English reader, have not seen in a book before. And I'm really used to reading books about magic and dragons and fairies, and seeing them as part of the Western idea of what a dragon is and what a fairy is and what fairyland is. And this book totally flips that on its head, because this book makes really clear that the truth about what a dragon looks like, the truth about where fairyland is that it's not a Western fairyland at all. It is a much more Malaysian-centered fairyland. They aren't really fairies, they're jinns. And dragons don't look like the kind of English dragon, like George and the Dragon that we have. They're Naga. They are a more Eastern dragons, and that's what they really look like. And so it kind of requires you, this book, to, or me anyway, it requires somebody who's white and Western to really turn their idea of magic on its head and stop centering themselves or myself and think about the world through the eyes of a character like Muna, who is Malaysian and who is seeing the magical world as somewhere that she is really part of, that she is really centered in. And all the English magicians don't really know what to do with that. So it's a really interesting setup for the book. The characters are so engaging. That is part of what I love so much about Zen's work. Every single one of the characters is lovely and you really fall for them and you're charmed by them. The dragon Rollo in this is one of my very favourite characters. I think he's fabulous. I love Prunella and it's nice to see her in this book. Muna is a really lovely character. This is a great book if you loved Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. If you're interested in historical novels that do something new with a historical period, if you like books about magic and dragons and fairies, this is a perfect book for you. I would say it's perfect for anyone 13, 14 plus. And finally, I always end my videos with a classic book, a book that has inspired me in the past that I love, that I think you'll love too. And this month's pick is Agatha Christie's 450 from Paddington. Now this is my terrible 70s paperback with a really weird cover. I don't think you'll find this cover in the bookshops, but you'll be able to find this book anywhere. And the reason why I have chosen it is because it is one of the books that I was thinking about when I wrote book 8. And there's a very important scene very early on in book 8 where one of my characters looks out of the window and sees a murder. This scene was partly inspired by something that really happened to me. I didn't see a murder, but one day I was waiting for a train on a platform and I looked up and I saw on a hill above me 2 people talking. That partly became the reason why Beanie sees what she sees. She sees a murder. But I also created that scene because of Agatha Christie's 450 from Paddington, when the main character is traveling on a train and she just happens to turn her head as another train passes her and she sees a terrible murder take place. But of course, she can't make anyone believe, the character in this book, anyone but her best friend, Miss Marple, that there was a murder. It's a really clever book. It is a Miss Marple mystery. It's very creepy. It's also got some quite good child characters. Agatha Christie is sometimes not great at writing children, but I think the kids in this book are pretty good, and they also really want to be detectives, which seems very realistic to me. So this is one of my favourite Agatha Christie's. I mean, they're almost all my favourite Agatha Christie's, but this one is a really great one. It's one that inspired book 8, and definitely while you're waiting for book 8 to come out in August, you should read this book. This is perfect for anyone 12 plus who enjoys mystery stories, murder mysteries, and who loves Agatha Christie. So that's all for me for April, and I will be back in May. Do not worry, I'll be back hopefully very soon in May to finally reveal the full cover and the title of book 8. And as I said, I think you're going to love this. I think you're going to be really pleased with what is coming, and I think you're going to be even more excited than you already were for the 8th of August when book 8 finally comes out in the UK and Ireland. So I will be back, but until then, goodbye.